So, we are currently standing at, well, right at the road where the Black Cross is. This is the Butler Black Cross. This is between Kittanning and Butler, Pennsylvania, right along the county line, practically between Armstrong and Butler County. Now, I had grown up hearing about this story. I think I first heard about it when I was 13 or 14 and working as a dishwasher. But the thing is, there wasn't a lot of information out there. In fact, this historical marker that we are standing in front of right now was only placed here, I believe, in July, but in the year 2002. So, you know, as far as these markers go, it's pretty fresh. And it reads, Influenza Epidemic Victims. Here are buried an unknown number of local victims of the worldwide influenza epidemic of 1918-1919, one of history's worst epidemics in terms of deaths. In October to early November 1918, with some 260 deaths in the county seat alone, immigrant workers in the limestone and other industries are buried in this cemetery, with 1 to 5 bodies in each grave. A large wooden cross long marked the site. So that's what the sign says. Now, just a couple quick things. I've seen some newspaper accounts over at the Historic Society that suggested that there may have been as many as 20 bodies in a grave.
That's what I've heard too, yeah.
Now, the reason for this too, oh, and also it's been long called the Black Cross, even though this sign here doesn't say so, because the cross that marked the location was actually made of old railroad ties that sat here. And I guess it wasn't too long ago that there were still some remnants of that. At least one of the first times I came out here, once I had found where it was at.
Whenever we were younger, it was still back there when we were in high school.
Yeah, it wasn't standing anymore,
but it was down, and I believe it was a local, I want to say a Catholic priest named Callahan that originally put that up, but it wasn't until years afterwards.
Okay. I wasn't aware that it wasn't until years after. But one of the reasons why this was done was because so many of the people, these were predominantly laborers, a lot of them Hungarian, they were pretty fresh in America, maybe only having been here 10 or so years. And so there wasn't really a lot of relatives to handle these sort of things. Now, of course, I live in Butler and in some of these older homes, and I've always wondered, from when we first moved up here, you know, because we lived in a house that was built for laborers in the city, could somebody or somebodies who lived in this house be buried here? Now, just, I mean, statistically, probably not, but
it wouldn't be crazy.
It would not be crazy, especially our old house. Our current house, I know the story of the people that lived there, but of course, there's no surprise to anybody listening that these past couple years have really brought the Spanish flu epidemic. We've been kind of finding parallels in our own time.
Right. And I think one of the interesting things that's always kind of weirded me out about this place in particular, I say weirded out just like because it's a strange thing, you don't think of mass graves as being something that are just like beside a farm road. Right. Around here. It's not something I would have ever thought about before learning about this. And this is not the only one of these around here. There are other ones, because I mean, with that Spanish flu epidemic, especially I believe in like the late summer, early fall, like between like September to like November, you know, you had dozens of people dying every week in certain counties.
And I'll have to check to see, because this is speaking specifically of Butler when they say the county seat. But oh, here, Claire, step on over. But I want to see what the population was, but 260 people dying in the month of November alone.
Yeah.
I want to say, I mean, the population was less than 20,000. I know that for a fact. The population currently of the city is about 14,000. So, I mean, that's not insignificant for 1 month in what was a 2-year pandemic.
Right. And I think, along with a lot of the folks here being immigrants, a lot of them were younger too, who had kind of like moved away to this area. So the reason a lot of these folks are in mass graves is because they didn't have they didn't have family around. They were kind of alone, you know.
That's what we're told a lot. Yeah.
So I mean, like that definitely kind of makes it, you know, I think a little sadder.
I imagine another aspect might be because just a financial burden. So even if they did, now one of the things. So I brought my daughter along because why not? Because this seems like a normal thing to do, go to a mass grave. But going to school in the area, and they've brought it up in school. What are some of the things they've said about it?
Just like it was right before Halloween, and we were doing a like unit kind of thing on local haunted places.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I'm glad you guys do that.
This was the first one, and they were just talking about how like where these bodies would have been tried to, like, where people would have tried to identify who these people were, was, like, downtown in a pizza place.
Really?
They had a pizza place back then?
No. I mean, like...
Oh, it's a pizza place now.
Yeah.
Yeah, current.
Currently is... I was going to say pizza wasn't really...
Like, but... So, one of the pizza places downtown was just, like, where these bodies were, and then if you couldn't identify them, they would just throw them out here.
Wow.
Yeah, so in school they were pretty clear about like these bodies weren't as respected as maybe you would hope.
Well, when you got so many,
right?
I mean, I'm not trying to be crass sounding, but when you have so many, the urgency of care kind of goes out when you're being overwhelmed like that.
Well, also you have to think that like at this time we're talking like germ theory is still relatively new.
Is it?
I mean,
it's certainly newer than it is now. I know that, but I'm trying to remember. Because I read a whole book about the Johns Hopkins.
Right.
And, but you're not wrong, because I know, like, even just ties and going to the bow tie.
So, like, or at least, like, how...
Washing hands.
Right, stuff like that. So I would think that, like, they knew enough to be like, we want to get rid of these bodies quick because we don't want the disease to spread kind of thing. So you have to think there's probably a bit of a timetable on it as well. But as far as like when people talked about it in class and everything, did you have any, like, were there any other students that had been here before?
Well,
you remember?
Okay, I know one kid that like lives
around
not
here?
that far away.
Okay, cool.
So he was like, yeah, we come down here a lot.
Oh, really? That's pretty cool. Now, did anybody have any?
Some wild birds out here.
Yeah, the crows and the jays, the corvids in general, are not letting us alone. It's kind of interesting. But any like what? So like any spooky stories you've heard about this place?
Well, my history teacher lives out here, kind of.
Okay.
And he said that he has like 2 or 3 like 7-year-olds, and he said that they came down here one day and his kids were like claiming that they had seen like glowing orbs or something.
Okay.
But he hadn't seen them, but he said that that's like a common occurrence that people will come down here and say that.
Man,
I know with one of the cemeteries that we've talked about in the past that went unnamed, one of the common stories is of like red eyes following you around. And I think I've heard similar stories of this back here. I think that might have been the story that I first heard that drew this place, brought this place to my attention.
Right.
And again, that would have been before it was marked, so it was harder to find back then for sure.
Right. The thing that, the story that I always heard, and that I was always most weirded out about whenever I came here when I was younger, is the voices, hearing voices in the woods.
Yeah.
And apparently, like, of like the victims and everything, like coming out of the ground. I think the idea of disembodied voices is just fascinating to begin with.
Well, that's one of the things I know that really spooks you, not just disembodied voices, but doppelganger ones.
Yeah, anything doppelganger related, just weird. I don't like it.
Do you think, though, it wouldn't be the victim so much as the people that had to bury him? Because could you imagine a trauma of doing that?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I think that, like, that's probably, like, because we've talked before about, like, cemeteries being haunted, things like that, and how, like...
FedEx is in a hurry.
A FedEx dude is not playing around. The idea, like, cemeteries really shouldn't be that terribly haunted if you think about it, because there's no lasting trauma there.
I'll give it to the groundskeeper.
Right. Well, but exactly. But I think that, like, when you talk about a burial like this, I think this is very different in that sense, you know, because, like, you're right, like, the folks that were doing the job, this wasn't just like, oh, like, burying Mrs. Pigglesworth today. Like, we're burying 20-year-olds.
Right.
You know, yeah, and that has
There was probably quite a few people involved in it. I mean, back then, to do a grave like that, they probably used like an old steam dozer or something.
Or something like that. You'd have to think so, yeah.
Well, my history teacher was talking about how there's a theory that if you don't bury somebody 6 foot under, then they'll come back to haunt whoever, or just the area in general. And then he said that there was a theory that the reason this place is so haunted is that they're not 6 feet under. But I was like, I feel like they're probably 6 feet down, especially with the spread of the disease.
I wonder why 6 feet?
Why is that the weir for bodies?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's obviously the practical reason that you don't want to bury people so shallow that animals can dig them up.
Right.
Because that's, like, not a good thing.
Or that rain could wash them.
Right, or yeah, with erosion and stuff like that, or just the ground settling.
Well, and coming from New Orleans, like, it's no secret to anybody that when it floods down there, a lot of times, old graves will be washed out
your bodies popping around.
It's a big nuisance.
Yeah.
It's certainly not sanitary.
Right. Well, and so I wonder, with, like, the stuff that happens here, like I said, I've heard of the orbs, I've heard of the disembodied voices and everything. I haven't heard much of anything else as far as, like, apparitions. Have you guys heard any apparition stories or anything like that?
I mean, the closest thing would be the red eye thing.
Right. Because I think that, like...
But there's a lot more traffic out here than I'm accustomed to.
I know, right? This is obviously...
So apparently 11:30 in the morning is the busy time.
Yeah, Conti and Sassy Road. It's not pronounced Sassy, but I'm going to pronounce it Sassy.
Yeah. Shall we walk back?
Yeah, let's go and walk back, yeah.
At least it'll get us away from the road a little bit.
Right.
Oh, there's still snow out here.
It's staying cool. So the sign that says "Smile, you're on camera."
Yeah.
I wonder where the camera's at. Smile, it's good that they're monitoring it. Because, obviously you don't want people vandalizing stuff back
Well,
here.
and that's happened before.
Exactly, yeah. So it's obviously a trail that keeps on going down there.
So here's the current marker.
Yeah.
And someone has left 35 cents. But there are some paper flowers here and everything, and so some people still come back, and I can't imagine it's any direct relatives per chance, but it's the stories come back. So they've erected a concrete slab with a white wooden cross, and this is all newer. And there's another nickel, so I mean we're up to 40 cents for the deceased.
And a seashell.
Seashell.
But honestly, I'm glad to see that there's stuff back here like this, because, like, you have to think, like, being buried in a mass grave, like, that's not how anyone wants to go out,
Well, and I think these sort of signs of remembrance, I mean, you can say to yourself that you're doing it because you feel sorry for the people that were almost forgotten for a really long time. Again, it was I had only heard the story kind of in rumors. A lot of people didn't think it was real, and the plaque was only erected again in 2002, acknowledging this historic period. But I think the real reason why people come back here and leave flowers is, even if they haven't realized it, is because an event like that really is a big reminder that none of us is any closer to the finish line than the next person.
Right.
You could be in your late teens and you're just as likely to keel over tomorrow as somebody who's 100. That sort of reminder, but also I wouldn't be surprised to see, because I'm sure somebody comes here and removes these flowers periodically. I wouldn't be surprised, too, if the current events in our world haven't kind of made people consider this. And maybe even these are, thank goodness I'm not here right now offerings.
Right. I think you're right. I think that's probably a really good way of looking at it. One of the things I'm surprised about is I don't see any evidence back here of, like, people screwing around.
The only thing I saw was a Twisted Tea can.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, right when we entered. But that's, one can in the
in Western Pennsylvania, a Twisted Tea can in the woods is like, it's
Where aren't you?
Right, exactly,
right.
yeah.
It's like seeing gravel in a driveway.
Right. So, but I was kind of expecting to see. Oh, there's more flowers over here. I didn't even see those originally.
Yeah, and someone put a flag, and it looks like that flag's overwintered. It's pretty mildewy.
That's at least overwintered, yeah. But I guess I'm surprised. Like I'm glad that there are remembrances here. I'm surprised there's not more evidence of people screwing around back here, which is good. I'm glad. I'm happy.
What I'd be curious about is what this place. Again, I first came here maybe 6 months after they put the marker up, because I was still in high school. And I remember, of course, it's hard to say because we're here in the middle of January. But
this path was not here when I was here.
This path was kind of here when I was first here, but it looks like they cut some away. Now, I'm also kind of curious as to, is this an approximation
of where the grave is?
Because here's the other thing. Like, some of these trees, what type of trees we got here, Brendan?
We got some elm. We got some ash back there.
Yeah.
These are elm.
We've got some, it looks like some Japanese barberry right back there.
Is that what that is?
Yeah. Yeah, those red berries and all. But, I mean, most of these trees aren't that old. Like, they might be 50-some years old. Now,
they're not I wouldn't say they're contemporary.
Witness trees, as you call them.
Right.
Maybe a couple.
Maybe that guy.
Yeah.
That big old...
But one of the things that is important to remember is here in Pennsylvania, in the Alleghenies and the Allegheny Peat, the forests around here are really, they have a life cycle of between like 60 to 80 years.
Right.
And after that they become stagnant. So it's my suspicion that if this was a forest then, and it may not have been, that most every single tree that's here came up after
the fact.
The event.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, like, I mean, you'd think they'd want to do the burying out away from enough stuff, but also close enough that it wasn't inconvenient.
Well, I think they came in on the train cars.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you have to kind of think, which would have been...
But also, they probably would have chose a place where they didn't have to clear the land too much.
Right, because again, time was probably a big factor.
One of the things I'd like to look into was if this land was public land, was it donated by a farmer? Out here, was it donated by a mine?
I think it was donated by a farmer.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure that's what my history teacher said.
Okay. So
I mean, that checks out. I mean, that seems...
It makes sense. But we know that obviously there was a lot of mining. There still is a lot of mining. There's a big limestone quarry not far from here, maybe 3 miles.
I wouldn't be surprised if this was owned by... let's say a mining company.
Or a farmer, but yeah. But I would be curious as to a name associated with the land before.
Right.
But yeah, below our feet, somewhere in this immediate area, are the bodies of untold scores of people.
Yeah, it's just, it's wild, and I think that, like, with the house right over there...
Yeah.
That makes it considerably less spooky, you know? But, like, if you were here at night...
Oh, yeah.
Like, especially on, like, a full moon or something like that, like, I could see it feeling menacing.
The thing is, it's like being in any cemetery, regardless of how little you believe or put stock into anything supernatural. It's you're surrounded by just so many reminders of your own mortality, and that's probably something you're not wanting to face.
Right, exactly. And I think that, it'd be interesting to know, like, what people do when they come back here. Like, just like legend tripping. If they're coming back here to, like, do, like, EVP sessions, or if they're coming back here to, you know, do, like, ritual magic, or if they're coming back here just to, like, stand around and drink Twisted Tea.
Yeah.
You know?
It's popular.
Yeah, exactly, you know. Because
people
like,
getting twisted out here.
Because, like, we always talk about how much the intent of people coming to an area affects it. And I think that if you have people coming here, especially in the last 20 years now that marker's up, you know, you have people coming here maybe for some paranormal reasons, but I think maybe also just, again, to leave flowers, or for the history element of it. So like, that's a very, like, I don't know, I'd say that's more on the positive side of things.
I agree with that.
So again, it doesn't feel dark back here by any stretch, but also it's like a bluebird day, So like, of course it's not, but I've been places on days like today that did not feel.
Yeah,
good.
I think I've told my story of being in Pithole, a famous ghost town from the dawn of the oil industry. Being there during the summer on a day not unlike this, except for it not being 30 degrees out, and just being very unsettled. And part of that was because there was an older bicycle, perfectly good shape, just sitting there on a kickstand.
Oh,
there was nobody around.
Oh, if we came in here and there was just a bike.
Yeah.
Like.
Right.
We'd find something else to do.
Yeah.
Now, exactly. Let's go get a sandwich. One of the things that I was reading in one of the books, I guess I have like 3 of those E.D. White books now from Western Pennsylvania. And one of the things that he mentioned in the book is people feel cold back here, like cold spots, and also sudden gusts of wind.
Yeah. We are not here on a good day for either of that because, again, it's middle of January.
Right, exactly. And one of the things that I was thinking is, since we're over the crest of a hill here, and there is mining, like we said, over to the west over there.
West and I think east too. I
Probably.
think there's a place right over there.
So it's places where the forest has been cleared.
Yeah.
So like sudden gusts of wind wouldn't be weird because of where we're at.
Car passing.
Even his car, that's an excellent point.
Well, and especially since most of the vehicles going by here are larger, from school buses to large trucks and
right. And especially in the summer, whenever this is grown in, you might not even notice.
And people are flying down the road.
You might not even notice.
Country road winding. One of the things too, though, is immediately east of here we have the largest underground mushroom facility.
Yep.
I think it's closed down right now, but an interesting thing.
Interesting fact.
Yeah, Claire loves mushrooms.
Fine individuals love fine mushrooms.
Claire, she just doesn't eat them, but she has a sign on her door proclaiming her love of mushrooms all the same. I don't know.
I have a few friends that are real into mushrooms. I'd say it's a good thing to be into, generally speaking. Like, very rarely do you run into somebody who, like, is like a mean person, and also like mushrooms are a big part of their aesthetic. It just doesn't happen very often.
Speaking of spores and whatnot, what if you came here to find... Speaking of spores, what if you came here and saw a fairy ring? How would that affect you?
Ooh. Yeah, that would not be great. I would, because again, I find fae stuff like interesting.
Yeah.
But like, it's again one of those things where I don't like. I can put myself in a situation where I can imagine ghost hunting or looking for Bigfoot stuff or doing UFO stuff or whatever. But like, when it comes to fae stuff, like, I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Like, it's like, just leave.
It's kind of like going to the snake exhibit at the zoo.
Right. It's like, I'm sure that reticulated python is super cool. Keep it as far away from it as possible.
Keep it behind glass.
Yeah,
please.
like I just...
Well, they have some of those poisonous snakes at the zoo.
This would be a good spot for a little fairy ring too, right over there.
Well, that's exactly kind of one of the...
Yeah.
Well, that plus the bicycle comment is what made me think, like, what back here, despite everything else, would kind of put you... ill at ease.
Yeah, like, cause again, like, well, it's like I said, there's no evidence of people like doing like ritual magic back here or anything like that, which I was kind of expecting. Honestly, I was kind of expecting that, because it's like, you think like...
Well, one of the things I'll say to that is, again, it looks like somebody clearly comes back here and he cleans it up periodically.
Right. So yeah, which is great, and I'm glad that they do that. So like, maybe this place does have typically better vibes than what I anticipated, which is good.
How many times have you been back here?
It's only my 3rd time here.
Okay.
I was here once in high school, once with my buddy Perry.
I think the high school, was it you and I that went? That
it might have been us.
Senior year, because it would have been after the sign, correct? Because it was almost
No, because
impossible.
it was the first time I was here. And that's now. That being said, the first time I was here may not have been exactly right here.
Okay. Yeah, because it was
that
almost
was like 10th or
impossible
11th
to
grade.
find.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is back when I was still at my Taurus. So.
Oh yeah.
So I remember coming out here, but I think I was with like Ben and Eric and people, those folks. But it's funny because we came out here at night.
Yeah.
And it was like drizzly, and again we might have been somewhere else.
Well, part
on
of me
this
loves the
stretch.
thought of you being pulled off the side of the road miles from here,
Yeah.
getting freaked out.
Right, yeah. No, and that's very possible. That's very possible. That's exactly what happened. Because, but again, that goes back to the whole idea of intent.
Right.
Like if you and your friends think you're in a haunted forest and you're in the forest, you are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like.
Well, it's what I think I before talked about. It was at least part of the study took place in Scotland, that they concluded that they're not really haunted places per se.
Mm-hmm.
There's haunted minds, and there's places that can lead us and lead our brains into believing that they are haunted.
Right.
Well,
They're
even, like,
more susceptible.
there's like studies with like Victorian homes and Edwardian homes where like those are most commonly the haunted house in a movie.
Right.
So your mind is automatically going to go to.
Is thinking like, oh, I have a 3-tiered staircase. Like,
We've been
of
told
course,
they're
yeah.
haunted.
Yeah.
Right, and if it's the time period for a lot of ghosts, and like if there's anything to the architectural side of like the paranormal,
Right.
Like again, whether or not Edwardian and Victorian stuff is susceptible toward, or we just imprinted on it.
Well,
it's definitely a thing. You're absolutely right.
Well, here's something to think about. You know, we look at that period of time and the architecture associated with it, and it coincides with the probably the apex of Gothic writing and the traditional ghost story, and it makes me think like an interesting thing to consider is that those stories took place in those settings when they were fresh and contemporary. It's an interesting thing to consider.
No, that's. I think that's definitely part of it.
So it'd be like if you were to be truly following the Gothic writing tradition, you'd be like Bentley Little and setting your haunted story in the middle of a cul-de-sac
That's a
in
good point.
Arizona.
But again, I think that's why movies like Paranormal Activity, like the first one, were so creepy, because it was a haunted house that was built like in like the early 2000s.
Right.
You know, so like I think it can go both ways, but I think that from a storytelling standpoint,
Yeah.
you guys are both absolutely right. That's like the more traditional, and I think if there's anything to the priming side of things,
Yeah, because language
that
creates
has to
reality.
exactly, yeah, that has
Well,
to play into it.
Even if you walk into a house like that, your senses are going to be heightened because you're
Right.
ready for
Right.
something.
It goes back to language creates reality. It's more than again, to steal a title. It's more than allegory. It's because like you said, you've convinced yourself you're in a haunted forest. You are in a haunted forest. You're going to react as though you are. If you're in an old creepy house, it's not really a creepy house. It's just an old house, but you've become conditioned to see it as creepy. You're going to likely be creeped out. That's just all there is to
whether or
it.
not there's anything happening or not.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
We psych ourselves out. more
Right,
than
and I
anything
think this is a good example of maybe, like, now the voices, now again, we're recording on a field recorder that is a professional field recorder. This is extremely sensitive. I am going to compress the hell out of this when I'm editing it.
Part of you is
And
hoping, isn't
yeah, and I'd love it if we got some disembodied voices on here.
What if you just got
But-
the ghost of somebody who drank that beer? I found another beer can.
Oh, there's
on the
my beer
woodpile.
can.
What if you just got like some slurping sounds from like 3 months ago?
That'd be weird. But hey, that would still be something. That would still be something. But yeah, but I think you're right, because I think that like, and plus like, I feel like people who come out to places like this a lot, if you're not like used to the woods, you don't realize how loud the woods actually are.
We've already commented on the birds.
Right.
Let me say this one thing. Like, if you do catch slurping sounds, that would be way more terrifying to me, because somebody trying to communicate with you, you could wrap your head around that.
Right.
But somebody just watching.
Just some errant slurping. Yeah, not a good thing. Not a good thing.
I'd feel violated.
I feel violated. But yeah, it's just so it's interesting. I think this is a cool place. If anyone out there is looking for a easily accessible place to do a little legend tripping that has some good history to it, I think this would this would count.
Yeah,
there's
we're maybe 20 yards off the road.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're into trees, like that big guy over there, it's a good tree. That's just a darn good tree, and same with that one over there.
You can't see it, but
you can't. Trust me, it's a good.
You should just take a picture of it and use it for the.
I think I will
do that.
Oh, my phone's in the car.
I'll do it. What tree are we looking at?
This big guy. This big guy with the branches that come out.
With the what?
The big guy out there with the branches that are coming out.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Camera sucks.
Or take a picture of any of this stuff. It'll all be good. But yeah, so if anyone has any thoughts, comments, concerns, feelings when it comes to the Black Cross of Butler County, please reach out to us. You can find us on Instagram or Facebook at the Ghost Furnace Podcast, or you can send us an email at theghostfurnacepodcast@gmail.com.